The stepson has been arrested for the murder of his stepfather following a homosexual affair. The call came in at 3:42 a.m. A man's voice, frantic, barely coherent. "He's dead, oh my God, he's dead." The dispatcher tried to calm him down, but the man's gasping breath filled the line, the raw terror unmistakable. "Who's dead, sir?" "My stepfather. There's blood everywhere." By the time Detective Sarah Whitmore arrived at the scene, the quiet suburban neighborhood in Austin, Texas, was awake. A cluster of neighbors stood at the edge of their manicured lawns, whispering among themselves. Police tape stretched across the driveway of a two-story house, a colonial-style home that looked like it belonged on a postcard. Inside, the smell of iron and something else, something rotting, filled the air. The body lay in the master bedroom. Philip Langley, 52 years old, a respected businessman and philanthropist, lay face down on the plush gray carpet. A deep gash marred the back of his skull, and blood pooled beneath his head, soaking into the expensive fibers. His robe was slightly open, exposing his chest, and a single champagne flute lay shattered beside him. There were no signs of forced entry, no sign of a struggle. Only one person was home when it happened. Langley's 23-year-old stepson, Nathan Caldwell. And he was the one who made the call. Nathan Caldwell sat on the couch, his hands trembling as he clutched a police-issued styrofoam cup of coffee. His face was pale, his dark eyes wide with shock. Dried blood stained the sleeves of his hoodie. He said he tried to check for a pulse, but Detective Sarah Whitmore wasn't convinced. "Tell me what happened," she said, her voice level. Nathan licked his lips. "I was asleep. I heard something like glass breaking. When I went upstairs, he was just there." His voice wavered. There was so much blood. Whitmore studied him. Nathan was tall, lean, with the sharp features of someone who'd been told they were beautiful all their life. His dark hair was slightly unkempt, and he hadn't shaved in days. He looked like grief itself. Or he was a damn good actor. She glanced at the other officers moving through the house. The forensic team was already at work, dusting for prints, collecting fibers, taking photographs. One of them whispered something to the lead crime scene investigator, who nodded before approaching her. "No sign of forced entry," he said. "But we found something interesting." He handed her a small plastic bag. Inside was a torn scrap of paper, the writing barely legible beneath smudged bloodstains. "I can't do this anymore." Whitmore felt a shiver crawl up her spine. She turned back to Nathan. His hands were still shaking, but something had shifted in his expression. His breathing was slower now, more controlled, as if he was waiting. Philip Langley had been an influential figure in Austin's business circles. A venture capitalist with a reputation for turning small startups into multimillion-dollar companies, he was known for his charm, his philanthropy, and his immaculate public image. But behind closed doors, the story was different. Whitmore's team dug through his finances, his emails, his personal records. Secrets started to emerge, ones that painted a very different picture of the man everyone thought they knew. There were bank transfers, large ones, made to a private account. There were text messages, encrypted but partially retrieved, that hinted at an affair. And then there was the biggest revelation of all. Philip Langley had been having an affair with his stepson. The moment Whitmore confronted Nathan with the evidence, everything changed. He went still, the blood draining from his face. "What?" "We recovered messages," Whitmore said, "from an encrypted chat. We also found payments, money deposited into your account over the last 6 months. We need you to tell us the truth." Nathan's lip quivered. I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me." Her voice was firm but calm. "We're going to find out anyway. You might as well tell me before we dig up more." For a long time, Nathan didn't say anything. His hands gripped the edges of his hoodie so tightly his knuckles went white. Then finally he exhaled. "I didn't kill him." His voice was barely above a whisper. "Then tell me what happened." Nathan looked down, his throat bobbing. When he spoke again, his voice was raw. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," he said. Nathan's mother, Rachel Caldwell, had married Philip Langley when Nathan was 16. She was a former model, stunning even in her late 40s, and Philip had adored her. They were the picture-perfect couple. But Nathan had never liked his stepfather. He thought Philip was controlling, arrogant, too obsessed with his reputation. Then one night everything changed. He and Philip had been drinking, something that wasn't unusual. His mother was away on a charity trip, and Philip had poured him expensive whiskey, talking about life, success, power. Then the touch. A lingering hand on his shoulder. The look in his stepfather's eyes was wrong. But Nathan didn't pull away. It became a secret. A dangerous, toxic secret. Over the years, it continued, a relationship built on manipulation, guilt, and power. Philip paid for Nathan's apartment, his tuition, his lifestyle. It was all under the guise of generosity, but they both knew the truth. Nathan hated himself for it. But he hated Philip even more. On the night of the murder, Nathan had come over to tell Philip he was done. He was moving away. Cutting ties. Ending whatever twisted thing they had. Philip hadn't taken it well. He laughed, Nathan said, his eyes glassy. Told me I was pathetic. That I'd never be anything without him. And then he grabbed Nathan's wrist. I pushed him, Nathan whispered. I just wanted him to let go. Philip had stumbled, just slightly, but enough to knock over the champagne glass on the nightstand. His foot had caught on the edge of the rug. And then, the sickening crack as his head hit the corner of the dresser. Blood. So much blood. Nathan had stood there, frozen for what felt like hours. And then he'd realized something. Nobody would believe him. Not with their history. Not with the money, the secrets, the evidence of their affair. So he called 911. The trial became a media frenzy. Headlines screamed scandal. Billionaire murdered in twisted love affair. Journalists dug into every detail, Nathan's past, his relationship with Philip, his mother's silence. The prosecution painted Nathan as a manipulative young man who had exploited his stepfather for years, only to kill him when he no longer needed him. The defense argued that Philip had groomed and controlled Nathan, making him a victim. The jury deliberated for 4 days. When they returned, the courtroom was silent. On the charge of second-degree murder, we find the defendant. Pause. Then, guilty. A murmur rippled through the room. Nathan's mother sobbed quietly in the gallery. He didn't react at first, just stared ahead, his face unreadable. Then finally he let out a slow breath. Like he had been expecting it all along. In the end, justice was complicated. Nathan was sentenced to 25 years. His mother disappeared from the public eye. Philip Langley's legacy was forever tainted. But the truth? The truth was something only Nathan knew, and he would carry it with him for the rest of his life. Nathan sat in his cell, staring at the ceiling. The paint was chipped, the air stale with the scent of sweat and bleach. He'd been in prison for 3 months, but time felt meaningless here. His lawyers had already filed an appeal, arguing that the trial had ignored the years of psychological manipulation and abuse he had endured. But appeals took time, and Nathan wasn't sure he cared anymore. The media had moved on to the next scandal, but inside these walls, his story followed him everywhere. Inmates whispered when he walked by. That's the rich kid who killed his sugar daddy. Ain't that the one who got with his stepdaddy? The truth had been twisted into something grotesque. Nathan had stopped correcting people. Let them think what they wanted. But prison had its own rules. And Nathan had broken an unspoken one. He was young, pretty, and infamous. That made him a target. His first real warning came during yard time. He was sitting on a bench, pretending to read a book when a shadow fell over him. Caldwell, a voice drawled. Nathan looked up. The man in front of him was tall, muscular, with tattoos creeping up his neck like ivy. His name was Leon Carter, and he ran things inside this prison. Drugs, protection, favors, everything. Nathan had heard the stories. Leon squatted down so they were eye level. You got yourself a reputation, boy? Nathan swallowed. I don't want trouble. Leon smirked. Trouble finds pretty boys like you. Nathan's hands clenched the book. Leon's gaze flicked over him like he was sizing up a new piece of merchandise. You'll need protection. Someone like you? You won't last 6 months in here without it. Nathan's stomach twisted. I'm not looking for, Leon held up a hand, silencing him. It ain't about what you're looking for. It's about survival. Nathan knew what he meant. Protection came with a price. I'm fine, he said, his voice tight. Leon chuckled, standing up. We'll see. As he walked away, Nathan let out a shaky breath. He had just made a dangerous mistake. The attack came a week later. Nathan had let his guard down in the showers. The moment he turned his back, he heard footsteps, too many, too close. Pain exploded in his ribs as someone kicked him from behind. He hit the tile floor, his breath knocked out of him. Then came the fist. Punches rained down his stomach, his face, his ribs. He curled up, trying to protect himself, but the pain was overwhelming. A voice hissed in his ear. You should have listened. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. Guards were shouting, pulling bodies apart. Nathan lay there, gasping, his vision swimming. Through the haze, he saw Leon standing nearby, watching. Expression unreadable. Nathan knew what it meant. Join me or this happens again. He lay there, bleeding, and realized he had no choice. Nathan didn't know how to survive in prison, but he learned fast. He stayed close to Leon's crew, but he never fully joined them. He did favors, small things at first. Passing messages, keeping his mouth shut, doing what he was told. Leon protected him, but it came at a cost. Nathan wasn't free. He was just in another kind of prison. 3 years passed. The appeal was denied. Nathan stopped thinking about the outside world. His mother had stopped visiting. His old friends had moved on. But then something changed. A new lawyer took an interest in his case. Her name was Evelyn Park, a sharp, relentless attorney who specialized in wrongful convictions. She came to see him one morning, her eyes blazing with determination. "I think we can get you out," she said. Nathan stared at her. "How?" She slid a file across the table. "New evidence." He opened it with shaking hands. Inside were documents, reports, things his original defense never had. And then, at the bottom, a single photograph. It was grainy, low quality. Security footage. Of someone else entering his stepfather's house that night. Not him. Nathan's heart pounded. "Who is this?" he whispered. Evelyn's lips pressed into a thin line. "That," she said, "is your mother." The revelation shattered everything Nathan thought he knew. His mother. The woman who had stood by his side in court, sobbing, clutching his hand. She had been there that night. And she had never said a word. Evelyn leaned forward. "We believe she arrived shortly before your stepfather was killed. The security camera at the neighbor's house caught her car pulling up, but the footage was never submitted as evidence." Nathan felt like he couldn't breathe. "She lied," he whispered. Evelyn nodded. "And that means we have a case." The retrial was brutal. Rachel Caldwell was forced to testify. She denied everything at first, but under cross-examination her mask cracked. The truth unraveled. She had found out about Philip's relationship with Nathan months before the murder. She had confronted Philip, demanded a divorce, but he refused. He controlled everything, her finances, her reputation. That night, she had come to the house to confront him one last time. Things got heated. A struggle. And then she grabbed the nearest object, a heavy crystal paperweight, and swung. Philip collapsed. She panicked. And then she heard Nathan coming up the stairs. So she ran. Left her own son to find the body. Left him to take the fall. Nathan sat there, numb, as she wept on the stand. I thought they would believe me over him," she sobbed. "I never thought it would go this far." Her words felt hollow. She had let him rot in prison for 3 years. For nothing. The jury deliberated for 2 days. The verdict, wrongful conviction. Nathan was free. Rachel was arrested. Justice had come too late, but it had come. When he walked out of the courtroom, the sun was blinding. The world had moved on without him. And now he had to figure out how to live in it again. Alone. The first night outside prison, Nathan couldn't sleep. The air was too clean. The bed was too soft. For 3 years he had lived in a world where every sound meant danger, where every movement had to be calculated. Now there were no bars on the door, no guards shouting orders. And yet he felt trapped. Evelyn had arranged a small apartment for him, a place to start over. It was nothing fancy, just a one-bedroom in a quiet part of the city. But to Nathan it felt like a foreign country. He stood by the window staring at the world outside. People walked by, laughing, holding hands, living their lives as if nothing had changed. For them, nothing had. But Nathan had spent 3 years being someone else. Someone who had to survive. He wasn't sure how to be himself anymore. His mother's trial began 3 months later. Nathan didn't go. He didn't need to hear the evidence again, to listen to the lawyers dissect every moment of that night. He already knew the truth. Rachel Caldwell had killed Philip. And she had let her own son take the blame. The press swarmed outside the courthouse every day, reporters fighting for the best angle, the most dramatic shot. Nathan ignored them. He was trying to rebuild his life. But it wasn't easy. He had no job. No degree. The only thing he was famous for was a crime he didn't commit. Some people still believed he was guilty. Online forums dissected his case, twisting facts, inventing theories. Some called him a manipulator, a liar. His mother took the fall for him. He seduced his stepfather, then killed him when he got bored. Nathan stopped reading. But the whispers followed him. The first time someone recognized him in public, it nearly ended in violence. He was in a grocery store trying to decide between 2 brands of coffee, when he felt someone staring. He turned. A man mid-40s was watching him, gripping a can of beans so tightly his knuckles turned white. "You," the man spat. Nathan's pulse jumped. The man took a step closer. I know who you are. Nathan said nothing. You got away with it, the man hissed. Your mother's in prison, but we all know the truth. You're a murderer. Nathan dropped the coffee and walked out. Evelyn told him to move. A new city, a new name. I can help, she said. We can get you a fresh start. But Nathan refused. I'm not running, he said. She sighed. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. But she was wrong. Nathan had spent 3 years in prison for something he didn't do. He had lost everything. He wasn't going to disappear. Instead, he did something no one expected. He told his own story. Nathan agreed to a documentary, his own version of the truth. The real story without the media's spin. The filming was brutal. He sat in front of a camera, answering question after question. What was it like in prison? How did you survive? Do you hate your mother? Nathan answered them all. He didn't cry. He didn't flinch. But when they asked, what now? He hesitated. Because he didn't know. The documentary changed everything. It exposed the flaws in the justice system. The corruption. The mistakes. It went viral. People who had once doubted him started apologizing. Strangers sent letters, messages of support. Nathan wasn't sure how to feel about it. It wouldn't give him back the years he lost. But it was something. Rachel Caldwell was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Nathan didn't go to the sentencing. He hadn't spoken to her since the trial. She had sent him a letter. He never opened it. Some things didn't need closure. 1 year later, Nathan was living in a different apartment. It was bigger, nicer. He had a job, a consulting role for a firm that worked on wrongful conviction cases. People still whispered when they saw him. But he had learned to ignore it. He was free. And that was enough. For now.